Join us for an insightful episode with Coach Christine, an avid endurance runner who has embraced her period as an athlete. Hear how she navigated the transition from predictability of her period to the uncertainty of perimenopause. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Unapologetically Woman, the podcast where women come together to share their unfiltered experiences navigating womanhood. Join us as we dive into candid conversations about periods, perimenopause, postpartum bleeding, miscarriages, and more. This is a safe space where we embrace the raw, real, and often unspoken aspects of being a woman. Get ready to be empowered, inspired, and heard. This is Unapologetically Woman. Today we have Coach Christine with Time for Brunch Productions. Christine is more than just a coach. She's a beacon of transformation, resilience, and empowerment. Christine's mission extends beyond individual coaching. She's on a relentless quest to inspire a world where women ignite the flame to sprint towards their best lives. With the spirit of an endurance runner and the heart of a grassroots advocate, Ms. Christine engages our blend of motivational anecdotes and actionable insights. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Christine. How are you?
I am so excited to be here, Ms. Tonya. So excited to have this conversation with you.
Yes. And I think that's where it starts, right? Where we just start having this conversation about our health as women and what we experience to let other women know you're not alone.
Absolutely. And to just kind of glean from that communal wisdom that maybe has been lost a little bit over the years as we become more separated and the internet's been wonderful to connect us, but there's also still stigma attached to some of these conversations that would have been had previously. So I'm very excited to get this going.
Absolutely. And you know what? One of the stigmas, which I think is very interesting, when I was reading a little bit on your story, you were talking about when your period started. And I'm going to let you definitely delve into that. I know you said it was at the age of 11, but you were very good at handling and scheduling your period, which I feel is, people don't really understand that we can do that. Even us as women, we don't understand, we can control and understand when our period is going to happen and really gain control of our lives. And I would really love to hear your experience. So you started getting your period when you were at 11. How was that for you? Where were you?
Oh my goodness. I think I was probably at that point. I guess there's a couple times in our lives where we probably do talk about things like this with other women, right? And I think getting your period was something that the girls all talked about because, of course, we could see who was developing, but we didn't necessarily know who had started their period exactly. So I think from my friend circle, I was probably the first. And then in my class, I think I was probably the second who started. So definitely started much earlier than most. And I feel like my parents, going to give them big kudos, were phenomenal at breaking past the stigmas on educating us in the household regarding these possible changes. So I was already looped in. I was pretty aware that there was going to be something happening. And I'm not sure if this was something they did because they had seen that I developed so early and they probably could just sense that it was coming. But the conversation was something that we actually talked about at the dinner table, and it wasn't weird or off, or there wasn't anything, I guess I should say, less than to talk about it. It was very normalized, and that transcended and probably is what led me into really wanting everyone to have this access to being able to communicate these kind of things. So I was really tuned in all the way. I mean, I had no idea what was going on, but I was still tuned in I could talk about it with my mom. I could explain the symptoms. And I think that's what really helped.
Great. Oh, wow. And that's actually really good to know because some of us come where it's like that period talk is like very shush, and I don't know why. Do you have any reason why this would happen? Some of us grew up in that household where it's pretty shush, talking about a woman's period.
Yeah, I think that culturally and socially we have been, if you even look back, I'm sure we can look at different texts and see that it was something that women were kind of told to take care of on their own without having that support. And I could definitely get into all different aspects, from biblical aspects to beyond, where, it was just kind of seen as maybe a time where women were not considered to be clean, or there was just a lot of concerns and a scared mindset around it. But I think, again, for my parents, they broke the mold because I do come from a Hispanic household, which usually is more conservative when it comes to these conversations. And I believe that it was the fact that they basically provided for me and my brother the conversations that they did not find in their own household so that we wouldn't have to go out and figure this out on our own. So that really was a really big game changer for me and allowed me also to have these really difficult conversations beyond period, but just regarding reproductive health so that I could see a GYN earlier on in life. And I was comfortable coming to my mom to explain that I think that I was ready to potentially be involved sexually with my partner. So all of those conversations, I was very lucky, I feel, in so many regards, because out of my friend group, I was also one of the few who didn't maybe have an unwanted pregnancy or who didn't get in any trouble with boys specifically, because I did have the option of talking about it with my parents.
That's very beautiful to understand that because, and you said something very special is where they instilled this in you at home so that no one else can put something else in because you already knew, you already had that with you. And that's very important, even that period education. So I'm curious, when you started your period at 11, like what was going on? Did you experience like the cramps, the nausea? Like how was your experience?
Yeah, I'm probably going to be a little bit different than many of your guests. I feel like I did have very heavy periods, and because I had very heavy periods that cycled really frequently around about 20 to 21 days, they were very lengthy in time. I felt like I was menstruating all the time. Truly is what it felt like for me. So, on top of having a short cycle of 21 days typically, and then having a heavy 7 to 10 days, it really did put me in a needing to be prepared more often. And I think the biggest difference of that is that I felt like I had to at that time limit what I was willing to do from a physical standpoint, in terms of maybe not going swimming or not getting involved in athletics. And that, as as I've changed my life quite a bit since then, I think was a bit more of a hindrance than I would have liked it to have been. And now I do see that that may have been the missing piece, that you don't have to quit being active. You don't have to quit living your life because of your period.
And that is, I'm glad you said that because we often, I feel like it's the extreme, we often like, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm missing school and I'm missing work, or it's, I'm going to fight and plow through it.
Right.
And it's one of those two extremes. And it's like, as women, we really have to find that balance and understand that we don't work the same way as men do.
Right.
And we really need to stop trying. So when did that click for you when, I would say that you realize, this is not a hindrance. Like this is a beautiful part of my process. Or did that ever really happen,
I feel like I started to celebrate being a female and a woman and all the things that come along with it, because I don't think I ever looked at my period as like this horrible experience. Again, because of my household and how we grew up. But I do think in terms of learning how to work with my cycle, probably did not actually happen until my late 20s, early 30s, where I started to actually be able to realize that, and I should caveat this, I am very, very, very fortunate, not just because of how I was raised, but also because of how my hormonal cycle, I don't have PCOS. I don't have anything like that would kind of maybe make for a very different experience. So I want to make sure that I'm saying that right out of the gate. But because of that, because I was so regular, I was able to figure out when I was going to be ovulating and when I had highs of energies. Like I started to learn really early. I started to educate myself and learn that I was able to see that I would need less sleep right before my period started, because hormonally you start to have some changes. And I would just kind of go with quite literally, pun intended, go with the flow of those energies versus absolutely fighting it every single way. So I know that when I'm going to have a lull, or when you're ovulating and you feel amazing, and that's when you have like the best skin day, your best hair day, and you're feeling energetic, versus maybe when you are actually on your period and feeling bloated and cramped. So just kind of learning how to like hone in as to how I actually felt from a hormonal cycle. And looking at scheduling my life and making certain decisions based off of when I knew that I was going to have those highs or lows, basically. So if I have an intense work project, I likely wouldn't do it when it requires a lot of mental energy, that I may be in more of a brain fog because of being on my period. So
that's beautiful. And that's really what it's about. It's about understanding our own flow, which is so unique to every woman. That's why I think it's beautiful for every woman to share their story and experience, because it's like, not every woman goes through cramps, but that's the stigma that they put out there, of a woman just writhing in pain on the floor, like every single time. And you already know, oh, she has cramps. Like, we already know and associate that image with that. So that's very interesting. And I also think, I don't know if the listeners caught it, but you started your period at 11 and it was like your 20s and 30s.
Yes.
That time frame. And it's like, whoa, I can totally relate to that. It wasn't until like 10 years later or more that we're really starting to understand. So, oh no, say what you have.
Well, you nailed it. It's because we do have that preconception that this is the cards you're dealt and you just have to deal with it. Like, this is what it is, right? And it wasn't until I decided, no, this can't be it, that I started to educate myself and started to actually chart. Like, I started to notate certain foods would trigger certain symptoms. So I know that I need to kind of be more mindful of that. Or again, different little feelings that you have that you usually are used to kind of just pushing through and trying to ignore it. But you could start to actually see it when you chart it. And it really was a game changer for me.
Wonderful. And that is perfect, because I think we need to understand, even, someone younger, who's watching this and they're going through their period, to know and understand that charting their mood, their energy levels, like, this is important. Charting your cravings, like, for me, I want sweets, not just sweets. I want pancakes, and give me all the syrup that you got, baby. Like, I'm in there with the carbs. And it's totally normal.
Right.
Okay. And I think that we need to hear and understand that more. And for young girls to start charting it better more, to start getting in the habit of knowing, start doing this now, start learning this now about the flow of your body, and help them be more productive in school, like, help them excel and let them know you can still do athletics while your period is on. If you guys do not know, Coach Christine, she is a runner. She's an avid runner. So she understands about women who have their periods while running. And that is really, that's her specialty with athletes and their periods. So definitely make sure you guys, like, not just if you're an athlete, but, you want to remain active in your life and how to control that around your period. Coach Christine is there for you. Okay, she is there for you. Yes. We're going to take a small, quick break, and then we are going to be back to understand Coach Christine's experience with perimenopause. So stay tuned. Welcome to Unapologetically Woman, the podcast where we dive into all things related to women's health, empowerment, and success. I'm Ms Tonya, a dedicated life coach using menstrual cycle synergy to help women executives, women entrepreneurs, and corporations, helping them establish better policies to accommodate women. If you are enjoying today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Share this video with a woman who would benefit from our discussions. We're always looking to grow our community and empower more women. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below sharing the insights you gained from today's episode. And don't forget to like this video to show your support. Want to be a guest on our show and share your story? Visit our website or find the link in the description to express your interests. Thank you for being part of our community. Subscribe now, click the notification bell, leave a comment, like, share, and join us on this empowering journey. If you're ready to take the next step towards your own empowerment, book a free 15 life coaching session with me. Visit www.mstonya.com to schedule your session today. For corporations looking to support women's health, I offer consulting services to help implement better policies. Remember, this episode is part of our launch episode series. You can expect new episodes of Unapologetically Woman twice a week, every Wednesday and Thursday at 5 a.m. Whether you're starting your day or winding down after work, we're here to inspire you.
Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on Unapologetically Woman.
All right, we are back with the lovely Coach Christine and talking about perimenopause, which, when we were talking a little bit earlier, I was saying that's not something we really think about, while we're on our period. We go straight to menopause. We don't actually think about perimenopause. And I know that you said that you had some uncertainty with this. And I really want to know and understand your story, because you went from scheduling and understanding your period to all of a sudden, boom, perimenopause. Yeah. So what was your experience with this?
Well, there's a few choice not suitable for work words that came to mind when I first started experiencing it, because again, it was a conversation that we don't have very often, right? I do want to let folks know right here as we're going through this, if you're in your mid-30s and you're thinking your doctors are going to tell you don't have to worry about this yet, but usually we'll start to have some perimenopause symptoms that you don't even recognize as perimenopause as early as your mid-30s. Some people even earlier, of course, some people later. Now, as I mentioned, I did start menstruating at a very early age. We only have a finite amount of our eggs, so it makes sense that I would probably go into menopause a bit earlier than most because of that early period. I first started to have a skipped period. And I remember going to my GYN thinking, this is so not like me. Again, remember, I used to be able to know exactly when I was going to menstruate. Like I could say Tuesday at 2 p.m., I should start about then. And I knew all my symptoms. And that was when I first learned that because I was getting older, I was starting to get into the point where stress would actually impact my menstrual cycle, as your body's really wonderful way of saying, right now is not a viable time for you to reproduce. And of course, that's what the body's entire function is. So it would try to kind of hold on to those really viable eggs. So I would have these skipped periods. A little bit later on, I get through that stressful period of my life gets a bit more normal, and start to have really heavy periods. And I mean, I had heavy periods when I first started menstruating, but out of the blue, and it actually even has a phrase that you'll become more familiar with when you get into perimenopause. It's called the super soaker times. And by that, I mean, it transported me back to when I first started in terms of, I'll never forget sitting in a meeting with my boss and thinking, oh my God, I don't know if I can get up because I think I have soaked right through. And I had not only soaked through my actual dress, I had soaked through her chair during this meeting. So it was absolutely mortifying, and yet something that happens. And I couldn't figure out where these changes were coming from. My moods were a little bit different. I felt a lot more breast tenderness than I had experienced in quite some time, so much so that I wasn't even sure if I had something wrong. And it wasn't until I started to actually research it, because my doctor kept telling me at that time that I was too young to go into menopause or perimenopause. So I did find an incredible book by the Dr. Stacy Sims, and it's called Roar. And the book is dedicated specifically to women who are going through not just their periods, but also when they start to turn into that perimenopause and menopause. And I started to see quite a bit of information that was relating at that time, not to just my symptoms, but also as to what was happening with some of the choices that maybe, while they may have been fine in my early 30s, were no longer able to serve me quite so much in my late 30s or my early 40s.
Wow, that is just so crazy to me. Because as women, we're going to these doctors for help and to get brushed off, we get brushed off because we're women, not to be man-hating, because, I love men. I'm here because of a man, and a woman,
Yeah.
I love men. But when it comes to our health, it really does get brushed off, just like you said, oh, your period, oh, just deal with the pain. You'll be it's bro, or just pop this Advil, but with perimenopause, like you said, we really don't know much. And there's really not much, even in the media, that talks about perimenopause. It goes straight to menopause. So you basically, you're learning about everything that's happening here. So when it comes to perimenopause, what advice do you have for women who are going through this? Do you recommend a certain type of pad, a certain type of tampon? Because you mentioned the flow. So understanding that, like, and today I think, what is it, Spanx?
Mm-hmm.
Well, like, so what do you recommend, for women?
Well, it is funny that you say that. Again, in Time for Brunch, where we did an entire series regarding our periods and products that we can use. And again, trying to reduce the stigma, we did anything from free bleeding, which due to menstruation poverty is something that people have to make sometimes as a choice. And some people choose it actually a little bit differently just because they feel like it works best for their body, all the way to like cups and everything in between. One of the things that I can say is that if you have to be menstruating right now is like probably the best time in your life because there are so many products available to us. So Diva cups in terms of that option where it does allow you to potentially collect more of the blood without having to change it quite so often. Or I am a huge fan of period underwear. Again, that came out a little bit toward where my cycle became very unpredictable due to being in perimenopause. But I do want to also roll this back a little bit and say that it's really interesting that we only focus on menopause because we actually do experience perimenopause for quite a few years before we get into our menopause state. Menopause actually doesn't happen until we have a cessation of our period for 12 months. And at that point, once you do that, you could pretty much say that you went through menopause and you are now officially postmenopausal. So it's interesting that we focus on menopause because it does kind of have an umbrella, but truly a majority of us are going to be in that perimenopause state for quite some time. And we're going to live a majority of our life postmenopausal. So it's really interesting that we don't necessarily hopefully with, of course, a lot of us getting older and having better access to healthcare, we will live at least half of our lives in a postmenopausal state. So it is really important to open up these conversations about our menstruation cycle from start to finish and realize that we do have the options of learning more. The doctor, we can't rely on the medical community. I'm going to give credit to the wonderful medical community for when they do try to educate themselves, but we have to advocate for ourselves. So learning more about our cycles and advocating for ourselves with doctors, not necessarily taking their first answer as our only response. And I remember hearing a really great little antidote on that was that we call it practicing medicine because it's not an exact science and they can't have the exact answer for every person that presents to them. So this is where getting to know your body, getting to know your cycle, getting to know what feels right for you in your skin is absolutely pivotal before you move forward in presenting information to your doctor.
That is fabulous. So just a little like kind of side note, when you were talking about that, I work in the film and TV industry, and I had the fortunate experience of working on Periodical. It is a documentary about women and their periods. And this is what changed like my world when it came to women's health is we had a scientist there, and she was giving the example of how a doctor will ask you to bring in your dog's poop sample, right? She was like, a sample of a woman's menstrual cycle can show you the condition of her uterus. She was like, why aren't more doctors telling women to bring in samples of their menstrual cycle to see what's going on internally inside the body before just going invasively in? And I was just like,
Mind
wow,
blown.
dogs are getting better treatment than us. Like,
Mind blown. Yes, it is. That's so fascinating because again, there's not a stigma attached to that. Like we know the dog can't tell us what's going on. So we're okay with tasting it and picking up a sample and taking it, bagging it and taking it in. Yet with us, it's expected for us to be able to know our symptoms, but don't know your symptoms so well that your doctor thinks that like you can't vocalize it in a way where they think that you're just exaggerating. It's so interesting. We do have an absolute parallel that you have to advocate for yourself in a way that you're still heard because you can potentially, unfortunately, there's a lot of doctors who will just ignore whatever you say. So again, finding this information, another really great resource for folks that may be considering this is the Menopause Manifesto by Dr. Jen Gunter. So there's a lot of resources to be able to arm ourselves, equip ourselves so that when we go, we're not seen as just emotional when we're presenting our information.
I love what you said about being emotional. I feel like it's such, and that's emotional intelligence, which is coming out more and more, people are realizing is a huge benefit and strength, to have. But that stigma about being emotional, being weaker, or something being wrong with it is really the issue, because just statistically, when you look at the crime globally, it's not committed by women statistically in numbers. It's committed by men who cannot control their greed
and their emotions.
Control their emotions, but that's put on women, that we cannot control our emotions.
Yeah,
it's the exact opposite, and I'm like, that's a problem.
Absolutely. That's why, again, I do feel like having these podcasts available, having your services available, having the opportunity to talk with other women about these situations, and almost kind of starting to go back into the mentality of having our people around us and opening up these conversations. So thankfully, this is a conversation that me and my girlfriends do have. So I've heard anything from women in my circle who have started HRT, hormone replacement therapy, to women who are choosing to go with edibles to help them manage their symptoms, and also a much more sense of empowerment the entire way, where it's not that they are willing to just say, okay, I'm going to start closing down my life. I'm past my bloom. They're starting to really see it as an opportunity to kind of empower themselves as they move forward with just a different season of their life. So I think that it's a beautiful conversation, regardless if we're starting our season because our period is just starting, or we're seeing our season bloom into a different time of year, a time of our lives. It is really pivotal for us to have these conversations.
That is absolutely beautiful. And I love the way that, you said to bloom, and that season and the change, because that's what life is about. It's about change. And the more we fight that change, the more we make it on ourselves, the more we make that struggle. And it's like, if we just go with the flow of our body knows what it's doing. It knows what it should do. And we just follow it as women, we are just going to excel in all aspects, every season of our life.
I so love that you said that. I feel like you need to put it on our shirt, because I really do think that when it comes to this conversation, it is about learning how to go with our flow and go with the flow and kind of create that as our pathway.
Yes. Thank you so much, Coach Christine. It was wonderful having you here on the podcast. I am looking forward to having more of these conversations with you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us today. Learn more about our guests in the description below. Download your free period tracker to stay in tune with your energy levels, mood, cravings, and your flow. Interested in being a guest on our show? Complete the form in the description. Leave a comment below to share your thoughts on today's episode and be entered into our surprise monthly giveaway. For women looking for a natural way to relieve menstrual cramps, try live resin gummies to ease menstrual cramps. The link is available in the description. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more empowering content. This is Unapologetically Woman.